act to follow, but if you've been following along in our program there and checking the names off one by one, you'll know there's only one act left. And so, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce myself, Dan Perlman. Well, I turned out gay. I started to think of this when I was in my freshman year of college, and I thought I should go home and tell my parents at winter break, but I didn't. Then I thought, I'll tell them at spring break, but I didn't. So when I was flying home for summer break, I said, I think this will be the break that I'll tell them. So I got home and I sat them down. Before I could say anything, my father said, "We know how shy you are around girls, so we've arranged a date for you." Irene Solomon, daughter of the Temple Board President. I went over to the Solomons. Mr. Solomon met me at the door, introduced me to Irene, took me in to meet her. She was a very nice girl, very attractive young lady, if you like that sort of thing. She kept talking to these three chairs, and I asked her, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, I'm talking to my three best friends, Sir Ronald, Lady Elaine, and Tommy." Okay, so she's a little bit nuts. But I promised my parents I'd go through with this date. I asked her out to the theater. She says yes, but the three of them have to come along. She's an expensive date. You know what 5 theater tickets cost in New York? Dinner and drinks, the three of them didn't touch a thing on their plates. After dinner, we're walking out to the parking lot, and Irene tells me, "Sir Ronald says you're too drunk to drive. He's driving." I was going to argue the point, but I didn't know who to argue with. I handed her the keys. We sat in the back seat of the station wagon for about 40 minutes. Then I said, "I think maybe I'm sober enough to drive now." She consulted with the driver's seat, agreed, and handed the keys back. I dropped her off at home, went home. Next morning, my father said, I sit down at breakfast. I know now that I know what dating a girl is like, it's time to tell him. Before I have a chance, though, he says, "Dan, Mr. Solomon wants to see you right away." I say, "Okay." I go over to the house. Mr. Solomon takes me into his study, and he says, "Dan, Irene told me everything about last night." Now I'm thinking, maybe Sir Ronald was right. I did have too much to drink. I don't remember doing anything. He said, "Irene had a wonderful time. We're so happy. I have a place for you in my business after the wedding." Now I know it's my summer to come out. But I have to start subtly. So I invite the Solomons out to the movies. I select a very careful triple feature, La Cage aux Folles, Victor Victoria, Torch Song Trilogy. I tell the Solomons, these are my favorite movies. Mrs. Solomon says, Mrs. Solomon shares my enthusiasm, and then says, "Julie Andrews was even better in this than she was in Sound of Music." Mr. Solomon says that he has a pair of bunny slippers just like Harvey Firestein. I decide stronger measures are in order, so I take them to the Gay Pride Parade. Mr. Solomon has 4 pina coladas and lambadas down the street with a drag queen. It's time for desperate measures. I take the Solomons to the Mine Shaft. It's an S&M bar in the West Village. Mrs. Solomon loved the leather outfits. Mr. Solomon wondered why there wasn't a nice place like this in Teaneck. He offers to make me a full partner right out of college. I can't stand it anymore. I say, "Mr. Solomon, I have to tell you, I'm gay." He says, "Okay, we'll buy you a house on Fire Island." I said, "You don't understand, Mr. Solomon. I'd be more interested in your son, Nathan." I said, "Okay, fine. Try her for a year. If it doesn't work out, we'll talk." I go home. I've now got to tell my parents. My father greets me at the door. He says, "The wedding rehearsal dinner is Wednesday night. All your relatives are coming in from all over the country. This is the happiest day of our lives." So Wednesday night at the rehearsal dinner, Mr. Solomon has 4 pina coladas and stands up to make a toast. He says, "To the merger of our 2 families, to Irene and Dan, or if that doesn't work, to Nathan and Dan." You could have heard a pin drop. I said, "I hadn't planned to come out at a catered affair." But it's true, I'm gay. Pandemonium broke out. My great Aunt Ruth elbowed her way to the front of the crowd. She said, "Dan, I used to be gay until your Uncle Morty died." You should be gay while you're young. It won't last forever. My father came up and said, "I'm glad we found out now. We haven't had the gifts engraved. We'll wait to see which one of the Solomons you end up with." The wedding day. I'm at the temple. Everybody's gathered, the relatives, the rabbi arrives. Irene doesn't. We wait. Irene's Aunt Sadie says, "I don't understand why. I talked to her this morning and she said her friend Ronald was driving her here." Figuring she's sitting in the driveway at home, we send a cousin to pick her up. He comes back a little later with a note that says that she and Ronald eloped. I'm standing there. I turn to Nathan. I say, "Well, I'm here. You're here. My family's here. Your family's here. The rabbi is here. This is a Reformed congregation. What about it?" "That's very sweet of you, and I'm very flattered, but I promised the Martians living in our backyard that I'd leave with them tonight." Thank you. For those of you who've enjoyed what you've seen tonight, many of us were sitting in the audience a few short months ago. The opportunity is open to you. Please feel free to come up and see one of us after the show or call the number on your program. I'd like to thank Don't Tell Mama for providing the space for us to be here, and Bobby on lights and sound. And I'd also like to thank our manager and coach, without whose wit and whiff you would have just watched an empty stage for about an hour and a quarter, Steve Rosenfield. I'd like to bring everybody up.